Hello, and welcome back to the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg Interns podcast. I'll be one of your hosts today. I'm Sarabi Shanmugam. I am a rising senior at Cumberland Valley High School, and today I'm joined by fellow intern Kirthana Santiana.
Yes, I am Kirthana Santiana, and I go to Cumberland Valley High School as well, and I'm a rising sophomore.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about gun safety in schools, a very important topic to us here at the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg, because we're all still in school.
It's a very big deal when you're a student and there's a lot coming after you, especially because now we have social media to tell us when other things are happening faster than finding it out in a letter that comes 6 days after a carrier pigeon sends it, So
So in this podcast, we're going to be talking specifically about how the amount of school shootings has increased in the United States over the past couple of years. We're going to be talking about the effect that school shootings have on students and teachers, and we're also going to be talking about possible solutions to making schools safer when it comes to, dealing with shootings and guns, because this is such a broad topic and we only have so much time.
It's going to be a little less about the worldly affairs of gun control and more about students and teachers and faculty. And we do see a lot about school shootings in younger school environments, but I do feel like sometimes they skip out on the high schools that are getting affected by it. So sometimes I feel like there are a lot of people that I know who are continuously always saying that it's just like, oh, it's not a big deal because high schools never are the target. And I'm like, but that's not what media has advertised. Like, of course, there are stories and news articles about how high school students get affected by this. I just think that now with social media and with different news channels, I think it's just like when you hear about a younger environment getting affected by something like guns, you take it more seriously. I feel like if you're like, oh, and they're in high school, they can think for themselves, it's not the same. We're still developing minded children who would rather have the protection of knowing that this wouldn't be happening to us than continuously hearing about it on social media.
Right. We're scared. And because we're not of voting age yet, the only thing we can do is discuss topics like this and hope that someone will listen to us. So we will be discussing this topic today. So let's just jump right into it. So let's first take a look at, hey, how prevalent are school shootings in the US? How prevalent have they been? So the most memorable school shooting that has happened in recent history, but also like late, is probably, I think, Columbine in 1999. There were school shootings before that, but Columbine was really the one that really let people know, hey, this is the problem. This is happening. And from there, it's only gotten worse. Mm-hmm. So, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, I thought this was interesting. There is a beautiful graph. I was telling Kirthana about this earlier. It's very beautiful.
You were raving about this graph. You said your exact words were, "This graph is stunning." I put that in quotes. I know people can't see me do it, but I put it in quotes. You said it was stunning.
It is. It's a beautiful graph. Yeah, but this graph, basically, it shows the number of school shootings with casualties at both public and private elementary schools and secondary schools. So it's like all encompassing. And it charts it from 2000, so the school years from like 2000 to 01, all the way up to 2020 to 21. So you see that, and this graph is really interesting because you see in 2000, it also splits, I should mention, this graph also splits up the amount of shootings into shootings with only injuries and then shootings with deaths. So you can see on this graph, obviously you can't see it, but I can see on this graph that it gradually starts to rise when we go from 2000 to 2010. And once we hit 2010, that number starts rising more rapidly, and we see more school shootings happening. So, for example, just a comparison, in 2010 to 2011, that school year, this graph shows that there were in total 17 shootings. 10 were only had injuries and 7 had deaths. And then you look further down the graph, 2020 to 21, that school year, so that was just last year, we see 93 total shootings, 50 with injuries only, and 43 shootings with deaths, which is a huge increase that isn't visible in the years before 2010. It stays like generally in like, oh, there's been like 20 shootings with deaths or something, and we see this huge increase, and that's a problem.
I feel like a lot of people don't notice that. I think that people really underestimate like what a graph can tell you, because I feel like some people are like, when I look at a graph, and I put myself into the mindset of a person who just like does not care about this issue as much as students would. So like say like a college graduate, a person who is out of school and now is an adult, able to vote, has a secure job, blah blah blah. That person looking at this graph is like, I mean, a person who was raised in a time from like from a time when it wasn't as big an issue. I mean, of course, it was always a big issue, but now it's being more publicized because of course, social media being a huge connector between us and other people in other countries. I think that a person who wasn't raised in that kind of time looking at these graphs would be like, this isn't that serious, because a graph is so small. But in my opinion, one small graph tells you everything you need to know about that period. Like there could be so many unreliable graphs that you can see, but if you compare all of them, they all show the same like increase from a certain period of time to now of the amount of school shootings. Currently, I'm looking at a graph from statista.com, which I know does not sound credible, but I have completely checked this out. It is thoroughly credible. My graph goes from 1970 to 2020. 2020 being, I think, January 2020. So, oh, sorry, May 2020. And it basically, I was like pretty surprised to see this. 1970 to 2008, it was like under 50. There were under 50 shootings per year. It was not very many. It was like slowly increasing, slowly decreasing. But then 2006, ironically, the year I was born, it's like really, it went above 50. And that's when it kind of like, that's when I started to see more of a rise. It starts to go down again. And then 2010, it's at its lowest by far. From 1970 to 2020, it's literally at its lowest. So I'm like, when I was like, because keep in mind, when analyzing a graph, you can't just like look at the entire thing to analyze it. You have to look at each individual section of the graph. So I'm looking at 2010, I'm like, oh, that's good. It's probably going to go down now a little bit, right? No. It like instantly just skyrockets. And now we're like up to 250 by the end of 2021. And I'm looking at 2022 and it's like, it's getting up there. Like it's getting closer and closer. I feel like a lot of people underestimate the amount of severity that means. Like 250 sounds like a small number compared to 1,000, but 250 when talking about a single person or maybe a group of people with a weapon walking into a building with people, with just people. It could be an adult, a child, it could be anybody. The idea of a person just being able to walk into a school, even my school, is like mind blowing. But that's the point that we've come to now. Not even as a country, but as a whole.
Well, yeah, so. And on that note, it's also not just like a person walking into a school and just shooting one person. It's like, oh, one death. Mm-hmm. No. Each shooting, if it's something accompanied with like a shooting with deaths, with injuries, you're affecting not only the people who are killed in that shooting, but also the entire community, their friends, family members, teachers who knew them very well. Everyone is affected. So it's, even though it's still like human lives are getting destroyed, also collateral damage, which kind of segues us into our next kind of section of,
Yes,
because
with our
there's a
transitions.
really, yeah, I know,
Wow.
brilliant segue. Our next topic of like, hey, how does this like impact teachers and students?
This is a really big one, especially considering the people. Okay, so Watch is run by, or like, Harrisburg, like, um Watch meaning World Affairs Council of Harrisburg. Mainly, at least our our internship is run by Michelle Englert and Joyce Davis. And because I personally know Joyce Davis to some extent, I know that she's a rather passionate person about this cause. And we were speaking about this the other day as a whole, like, the whole internship was speaking about it, I think on like the first day. Um, and like, honestly, she was right. She was talking about how teachers and students are going to, and their families are going to be most affected, and the people who are watching it from a third person's point of view aren't going to be seeing it the same way. If that makes sense. So it's like, if you are a person looking at a news article, like you see all the time in social media, like, oh, I'm looking at this video of like a school shooting. I send my condolences to these families. I'm like, that
Thoughts
means
and
a lot.
prayers.
Yeah, like, yeah, thoughts and prayers. And I mean, I guess that means a lot, but like, you're not. It's one thing to say, and it's another thing to do.
Thoughts and prayers aren't going to stop kids from getting shot up. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And not only that, but these people, like, I feel like these same people expect teachers to do that kind of thing, because I feel like people don't think that teachers are affected as much as students are, but they are affected just as much, considering they're the people who teach those students on a daily basis. They are the people who are putting their lives on the line to protect these students. Um, and I'm not saying that that accounts for every teacher, because there are some teachers who are like, I will fend for myself. But even those teachers, like, they have a right to say that. It's not what they signed up for. I think it was Temple University, Danielle Martin, she was talking about how she used to be a teacher, and how she was saying she didn't sign up for that job to have to go through that. It shouldn't have to be
Yes.
something that they would do.
Mhm. It is like a thing when you are in a classroom, you are the teacher's responsibility. So teachers are not trained when they are in school. They are not like, they do not go through like police training where they're taught how to deal with that trauma. They are taught, hey, go in, teach these kids, here's what you do. That's it. They are
Oh,
not equipped to this. They should not be having to
I
exist
don't understand that. It,
like
it truly does not make sense.
almost like, I want to say like almost like a state where they are put in a position they did not sign up for.
Hmm. Especially because, like, now people are expecting, like, there's this whole thing about teachers with guns. This is like a whole nother topic to talk about, especially because if a teacher hypothetically were to have a gun administered to them upon, like the government is like, hey, you are now a school employee, therefore you get to have a gun, and now you have to protect these children, right? Then that teacher needs to now have, not only, it's not just like a one and done thing when you train with a gun, you have to have persistent training. Like, it needs to continuously be happening while you have that gun. On top of that, there are students in the building who know you have the gun. So it's like, is that supposed to happen? Is it not supposed to happen? Because I can see where other people are coming from, being like, oh, they'll have something to protect themselves, and not only themselves, but everybody else in the classroom. But I'm like, what makes them better than the shooter to use the same weapon and to be able to, like, because not
Yeah.
only are you injuring the shooter, but the shooter is also a person. Like, people don't see that perspective either. As much as I would completely, like, just not, I hate the idea of a person coming in and harming people. I can also see how that person is still a human being and has their own thoughts. So it's just like another way to approach it. Of course, I'm not saying I agree with methods of violence like that, but I do think that what makes you better, if you're willing to harm another person.
I mean, yeah, and then also giving teachers guns gives them more added, again, they're in a position they don't want to, they didn't sign up for that. Like,
Just
because
stress.
when you give a teacher a gun and you say, hey, you can use this to defend yourself, sure, but you're also putting them in a position where they may have to take another person's life. And I can tell you right now, teachers do not want to take other people's lives. They are there to help
Teachers are
people
here
learn.
to
Yes,
educate.
to help people learn, help people grow. They want to see people live and go and like grow and live their best lives. They do not want to take lives. So
To live their best lives. Yeah,
yes.
honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a really funny saying, like live your best life, but at the same
Live,
time,
laugh,
it's like
love.
that's exactly what teachers want you to do. Like teachers are always, as much as we're like, that teacher is like super mean and I hate my math teacher and blah blah blah. It's like the same thing comes down to these teachers are doing, they signed up for this job to help you because like teachers, they love the students that they work with. They obviously they love their job unless they don't. I mean, met a couple teachers like that, but most teachers are people who are doing this for the benefit of other students, for the benefit of people to grow up and be something, right? And for students, like I also want to touch on this, how students who want to go into the educational field, if this whole thing with teachers and guns is passed through, that could also scare off future educational providers, like people who want to be like, I want to be a teacher or faculty member in a school district. It could scare them off because they would also have to be administered that gun. It would give them the opportunity to take a person's life. Not only that, but not every teacher is like I said, as I hype up teachers like to the highest extent, but at the same time, not every teacher is okay in like a good mental state to have an administered weapon. So that's a whole other thing. It's so complicated and tangled. I just think that it's a whole other issue to, like, we already have this issue of school shootings, to add on to those teachers having guns, to add on to more student trauma. It's just it's extra, it's unnecessary.
And then students also face a similar thing where it's not like, oh, we're getting guns too. We're not giving students guns.
No, no,
It's
no.
similar in the sense that they also have a lot of stress because schools are designed to be a safe space. When you go to school, they tell you this is a safe space. You can share anything. If you're in danger, just come talk to like a teacher, an adult. This is a safe space. You can be yourself, right? So when there's that threat that you could die without your consent in a school, that space no longer a safe space. It is simply a space. So it kind of puts students in this weird mental state where it's like, I want to learn, I want to study, but I am too scared for my own life to focus on anything. And it puts them in that very strange spot. And I mean, being students, we've experienced that ourselves, where it's just like something is happening, something is off. Like the
Yeah,
energy after every school shooting, the energy, you come in the next day to class, the energy's just off. Everyone's like,
it's just
whoa.
weird. It's like it's awkward. I feel like I was reading this article by Journal of School Health. Again, sounds super sketchy, but I swear I like actually went in and I made sure this article is 100% correct. And I do think it's not very relevant. Like it's literally, I'm not even joking, 2010 it was written, but I think it kind of, I read this because I feel like it offers a perspective of thoughts and like how people felt and how people were taking it in 2010. So it's kind of like a little peek in the window to obviously a time when some of us were alive, but a time when some of us weren't alive, you know. And I was finding it interesting how they were talking about basically the topic of the article was, should gun safety be taught in schools? And I don't know, this article is like in favor of students knowing how to use a gun, and teachers making sure that student, like I don't know how to explain this. Like this article was all over the place, it was whack. And apparently it's not just the Journal of School Health, it's also like a couple other sites I found. I believe one of them was I think one of them was it was like a government official site for Pennsylvania, and I was reading it and it was just like some of these articles, a lot of social media influences what we do now. I think that people don't really understand that this is a problem, but there are also solutions, which I will lead Sarabi to talk about now. So what do you think some, like, at least a few solutions are to this problem that we are all facing, not only as a country, but as a whole?
Well, yes, well, solutions are kind of my thing because, I have like friends who are younger than me. I have a sibling who's younger than me and has to go through school still. Like I'll be out of like public school in a year. I'm gone. But I know people and I worry about them. So I'm invested in this. So
She's not lying, because I'm like 2 years younger than her. So
yeah. So well, the first obvious solution is legislation that makes it harder for younger people to get guns, that makes it harder for people to enter schools. So CV, that's a school we both go to, is honestly a relatively safer public school. We have security, we have doors that lock, we have like policemen on site all day every day, so we're safer. But there are other schools in our area that are not that safe. No, like they have no security. Maybe they have all the schools have doors that lock, but there's no like security. Like we have lots of security, like you will see them walking in the halls. So legislation that helps give schools extra funding to maybe get security would be very helpful. But if legislation's a finicky thing, you can only get so much done there. It moves very slow. So for fast solutions, currently our school uses Alice, which is it's basically a it's like it's an acronym for a thing to do for teachers and students sometimes to use in case of an active shooter. And so it stands for alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. So using Alice, I don't know if all schools use Alice. At our school, it is required that teachers know how to use Alice, but I don't think all schools use it. It is a very good system because it has very step-by-step, very clear process that it's like, as soon as the teachers get the alert, hey, there's a shooter in the building, immediately there's like a plan. It's like you lock your doors, you put things against the door to barricade it, or if you have the chance, just get out. And it goes through all of that. So it's a very good system that schools can use. Another thing that can be used is a group of teachers in Iowa, actually. This is really interesting, the backstory behind this. They were concerned after they saw the amount of school shootings go up, and they were like very concerned because, the doors in schools can sometimes be a bit weird because, buildings age, they get harder to, keep maintain, especially if you don't have like a super huge budget for your school. So they invented a little device called the sleeve, which if you have a door that opens outward, usually these doors will have a type of hinge on top that will open and close. So you take the sleeve, it's like a little device, slide it over that hinge, and it can stand the force of, I think, 500 pounds or something. Don't quote me on that, but it's very interesting.
I am so passionate about the sleeve. It's ridiculous. Like, you should have seen when she
Yes,
said that.
the
I like
sleeve
freaked out behind it. It is literally the
is
best thing. I
amazing.
was so when earlier this year, during the school year, obviously it's summertime now, but earlier this year, my science teacher, we were talking about the sleeve in class after a recent school shooting. And he was like, yeah, that he was talking about the sleeve. He was raving about the sleeve and how badly he wanted it at our school, like on another level. Because not only, like, I feel like people think it's just like some small insignificant thing. It's probably like a really good chance at staying safe. Not only was he talking about that, but he also talked about another solution for schools that aren't as, like, I don't know how to explain this, like schools that aren't basically like schools that aren't as like blessed as our school, as privileged as our school, to have all these things.
Yeah, we're pretty good for a public school.
Yeah.
We're very good.
We're very, like, for a public school, we have a lot of things, like things that some of us see as unnecessary, but like honestly, we could not, we wouldn't be considered as like a school that we could be safe in without those things, like security, and our doors all have like barricades on them, all like the little wire on the windows so that you can't break in and open the door. I think that's most schools, but some don't. But so he was talking about how like less fortunate schools, what they can do is some faculty keep belts in like a
Yes.
compartment, and you just stick that, you like basically wrap the belt around the
Yeah,
hinge,
tie it
and then you
around the
tighten it.
Mhm.
Tighten it around the hinge, and then it works like a sleeve. It wouldn't do as good probably, but
Yeah.
it would be like a good temporary solution for
And
that.
the sleeve is just easier to use because you really just pick it up, slide it on, and then you don't have to do anything. With the system we have right now, you can use the belt to hold the hinge, or you can barricade. The problem with barricading is that not all classrooms are set up to incorporate that. So some teachers will have to literally push a table in from the other side of the room past a whole row of desks to put it up against the door. And sometimes they won't be able to move fast enough. So with the sleeve, you just jog on over, slide it on. There's also an alternate option for inward opening doors that is more like a bar. And so if you try and push it open, it just hits the bar and bounces back, like it won't open, which is also helpful. So those are just some solutions to consider. Actually, I think we're running a little bit over time, so you might have
That
to
is
wrap
true.
this up.
So in conclusion, there are many solutions that you can go investigate on your own. We obviously provided some here for you to be able to go and look into, but you, our audience, of whoever is listening to the Watch podcast right now, we would like to officially thank you for listening to our little segment about gun safety, and also just let you know that there are solutions that you can take, precautions that you have. Everything is always in the people's hands. As much as we think that there is a whole other government controlling us, some of that government, most of that government does care about what we have to say. So even if you're under 18, even if you're over 18, there's always a way that you can approach your local or your state, I don't know how to say it,
Representatives, like elected
representatives,
officials.
government.
That's and like it's you can use your voice. So we're using our voice through this podcast, but you can write letters, you can send emails. There are many ways you can get in contact with people, and you can show, school district, like your local government, state government, you can show them how important this is to you, right? So,
I
use your
think,
voice. Thank you for being here. We hope you learned something.
and
This has been quite a
we're
trip.
signing off. Watch 2022. This is Sarabi and Kirtana for gun safety today.
Yes. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yay, bye.